I don't think that I particularly have hot takes. I just think that the conversation has been forced in one direction, and any dissenting opinions are greatly frowned upon. I have said in videos before that I am a writer. I am a creative person, and my skill set perhaps does not reflect your skill set. That being said, I still think I'm right about this one. A heavy amount of talk is done about the GM's responsibilities, and whilst I would like to push a little bit more focus onto the player's responsibilities, you obviously have to recognise that the GM has the largest responsibility. They are running the game. And there are a lot of factors that go into it, and we are a varied group full of a variety of skill sets, and trying to find one set of rules that fits everybody is quite difficult. However, I would argue that the GM realistically only has one job. No matter what the system or what the game, they only really have one job, and that is to craft the story of the game. This doesn't mean tell the story of the game, as most people tend to interpret that expression. It doesn't mean you sit there telling these players what is happening in the world. It means that you have to pull it all together to make sense. You have to ensure that what's happening in your world obeys the logic of your world. You have to make sense out of the player's chaos. And I would say that that storytelling, because that's what it is the only skill that a GM needs to master. Dungeon Craft, the DM's Lair, and Deficient Master have all made videos decrying the concept of storytelling, and the conversation is dumber for them having done so. In their video, Deficient Master identifies the 4 pillars of running the game as referee, actor, architect, and storyteller, and then identifies that storyteller is the worst of those. And I think what they're really saying isn't that storytelling is bad, it's that they're bad at it, and I don't think that refusing to get better is really the answer. But I'm being kind of bitchy right now, so maybe I should try and make a solid point instead. First of all, storytelling is actually not that hard. In fact, Deficient Master, even in the video, recognises that the players should be contributing to that as well. They should be helping to build the story and acting in a logical way for how they want the story to progress. The age-old problem of "it's what my character would do" isn't saying that playing in character is bad. Players should be playing in character. What those players are really doing is playing in an illogical manner to the spirit of the game. If you have a brooding, serious, loner type character and the question comes up of why would you travel with the party when you have nothing in common, well, the answer to that is because that's how the game works. You agreed to play a game where, as a group of characters travelling together towards a common goal, that's the game. If you made a character who doesn't fit that, well, congrats, you made a shitty character. Go away and make another one. So for sure, it's a group effort, but that doesn't mean it's not storytelling, and it's still the GM's job to make sense out of that, to pull all the threads together and make sure that there is some coherence. Now, no one's asking you to write the next Lord of the Rings. In fact, you don't even need to have any particular common sense to your world, but there needs to be a logical through line. You need to be able to tie the player's actions together in a way that makes sense. That is the storytelling. It's not this happens and then you tell the players that this happens and then this happens and then this happens. That is a fundamental misunderstanding of what storytelling is and what good writing is. What these dungeon tubers are really rallying against is bad writing. And yeah, bad writing is bad, and maybe, yeah, good writing is hard and you just are not comfortable trying to pull that together. But I'm going to defer to Trey Parker and Matt Stone for a moment.
We've found out this really simple rule that maybe you guys have all heard before, but it took us a long time to learn it. But we can take these beats, which are basically the beats of your outline, and if the words "and then" belong between those beats, you're f***ed, basically. You got something pretty boring. What should happen between every beat that you've written down is either the word "therefore" or "but." Right? So what I'm saying is that you come up with an idea and it's like, okay, this happens, right? And then this happens. No. It should be this happens and therefore this happens. But this happens, therefore this happens. And that, as soon as we are able to, and literally sometimes we'll write it out to make sure we're doing it. We'll have our beats and we'll say, okay, this happened, but then this happens, and that affects this, and that does to that, and that's why you get a show that feels like, okay, this to that, to this to that, but this, here's the complication, to that.
I'm not going to pretend the writers of South Park are the Shakespeares of our time, but they do make a solid point as to that's how a story should be structured. It's not about you crafting something that happens a fait accompli. It's about you building your story in a reactionary way. This is why I tout improv as the highest form of running TTRPGs. I will very rarely write more than a session in advance, and when I do, I tend to get bored of the game quite quickly because it takes too long to get to what I've had planned down the line. Writing session to session allows me to give the players total freedom to react within the world that I've immediately created in front of them, and then figure out what needs to happen next based on their actions, based on who they are interacting with or what part of the world they want to go with. I can then write an outline for what I think the next session will be that they can then play with. Sometimes I have to grab little bits here and there because they'll ask questions, or they'll sprout off into a different direction, or they'll begin filling in blanks of sections that I hadn't really thought about. So it does get tricky and you do have to think on the fly quite a lot. But generally, I want the story to be reactive to them, but it is still my responsibility to write that story. And I should be free to make decisions in that world based on the players' interactions with it. Decisions that may go counter to what the players want, but that has to obey the logic of that world or that NPC or that moment. This, despite what anyone else may say, is all storytelling. Storytelling is not simply having something written down and then saying it out loud to your players. With the irony there being that that's kind of what modules are, and they're very popular and people want to play them all the time. I saw a conversation with somebody who was playing Curse of Strahd for the 3rd time. I have no idea why. What could you possibly still be getting out of it? But hey, you do you. You cannot simply give up on storytelling and hope that your knowledge of the game will see you through. I think that all that creates is a game of totally random nonsense happening that eventually just fizzles out because everybody gets bored of it, which is how a lot of games go, I imagine, but it's better if there's some kind of through line. Players will be more invested if they feel like their presence is having an impact on the world, and you can only do that by taking the nonsense that they do and building a logical story out of it. You are storytelling in real time. Storyteller is the primary focus. It is the most important pillar by far, and you don't have to be brilliant at it. You don't have to be a genius at it. You don't have to even be particularly good at it. You just have to attempt to pull all the threads together and have something satisfying waiting for the players at the end. And players should take some responsibility to act logical within the world in order to drive the story. If the players want the story to go in a particular way, they should attempt to do that. They should vocalize. I would say one thing that they do very well on Critical Role is that the players are quite vocal about how their character views the world, and Matt is able to take that on board and build the world from it in order to affirm their beliefs or occasionally subvert them, but that's slightly trickier if you're looking at doing very basic storytelling. But yes, you should be able to affirm your player character's core beliefs about the world as long as they vocalize them to you. And again, this is all storytelling. It's got nothing to do with world creation. Whether you want to world create is entirely up to you. It's got nothing to do with how good of an actor you are. Don't see how that's relevant particularly to the hobby, and it's got nothing to do with being a referee of the rules. The rules are largely optional as far as I'm concerned, and I prefer rules lighter games anyway. So again, I just don't see the relevance of that. I just think that storytelling and getting better at it is better than simply pretending it doesn't matter. You might argue that I am being very unfair to these creators, and generally they give quite good advice, and yeah, okay, you're kind of right. I am being kind of unfair for the purpose of entertainment value. I am going a little over the top on this one. But I do think that often those channels give contradictory advice, or they attempt to oversimplify whilst not really explaining themselves. For example, if you're giving your players a clear goal, but giving them freedom to choose how they get to that goal, well, that's just the illusion of choice. It's not actually choice. It's railroading with extra steps, which again is sort of fine. I don't actually think railroading is that big of a problem as long as it's the players trying to solve puzzle A to get to part B and so on and so forth. I don't think that's actually that bad. I think that can be somewhat satisfying. That's how mysteries work. If the answer is already written, then no matter what your players do, they've got to get there somehow. So does it make that much difference? Anyway, that's not how I run and not how I would necessarily advise you to run. I'm just saying, like, maybe chill out about it a little. When the channels do talk about the principles of storytelling, I think they overthink it. You don't need to be clued up on the principles of story structure. You just need to be able to take what the players are doing and build it into the logic of your world, and you can do so without really having an end goal in mind. Allow the players to dictate what they think. Now, you can have villains and problems and cataclysmic events and things built into the dynamic of your world, and it's easier for sure to present the players with a problem and allow them to just go about and tackle it. That's definitely the simplest way to run these games, and I would never talk somebody out of doing that. It's how Critical Role runs, after all. It's precisely what they do. Critical Role, generally speaking, is more railroaded than I would like to run a game, but that's fine. That's just easier. The players need to kill the thing or find the thing or do the thing. That's perfectly fine. The world will have stakes. It will have objectives. The players can lean into those. So yes, I'm being unfair to those channels, but it's because I think when those channels decry storytelling, that's not really what they're doing. They aren't really against storytelling. They're against the idea that they have to be good at storytelling, which you don't have to be. You don't have to be good at this at all. You just have to, again, as I keep saying, apply some logic to it. And those channels do talk about storytelling principles in a mechanical sense, because ultimately they're probably more gamers than they are creatives, and thus they think in mechanical terms, and that's just an easier way to do it. Oh my god, there's a cat. Don't be naughty. Okay, I'm gonna take... No. What's up? What's up? You play with that lead that's dangling back there. So I guess what I'm really saying is you don't need to overthink the storytelling. It's something that can flow much more naturally. Are you fussing up the microphone? Alright, well I have to wrap this up now, don't I? Because otherwise you're just going to be continually in the way. I don't have the heart to throw you out, and my door doesn't close properly. To leave that point there, I guess, and just let you have a go at me in the comments about how wrong I am about how those channels express themselves. I'm using hyperbole to make a point, god damn it. And I hope I'm not alone in this. Please do let me know in the comments. But I just think that's a better way of looking at it than simply dismissing the concept entirely. So, yeah. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. Check out all my links. And this was a very brief ending. I just suddenly just rolled right into the end of this video. But yeah, thank you for watching. The end.